Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2022 film Attachment. It's a Shudder exclusive and it's coming to Shudder on Thursday, February 9th. So this is a no spoiler review, although if you want to put some comments down below because you've seen the film and you want to talk spoilers, you can go ahead and do that. This also feels like a good time to just say, please subscribe to my channel if you like this video or any video I've ever done. I appreciate that. Also, you can hit that notification bell button and then you'll know how many, well, not how many, but you'll know when I'm putting up videos. You might know how many if you're counting, but you'll know when I'm putting up videos, which I'm doing about 3 or 4 a week. So if you watch them as soon as they go up or close to that timing, it does help me out with the algorithm and YouTube, but you know, is what it is. Alright, so let's get into Attachment. Written and directed by Gabriel Bier Gislason. I hope I did well on that. I hope I did okay. I tried. Also did films Samuel's Getting Hitched and Purple Haze. This is a Danish film, but it is a mix of Danish language, Hebrew, very small amount of Hebrew in comparison to the others, and English. The majority of it is in English, so if you're a person who's not huge on subtitles, it won't kill you to watch this film because a lot of it is in English, so you won't have to read a ton of subtitles. Although the screener version I got had subtitles for everything, whether it was Danish, English, or Hebrew, all of it. So don't know if that's the way it's going to be once it hits Shudder or not, because sometimes the versions that I get for screeners are a little bit different than what actually goes up. Most of the time, it's for better when it's changed. All right, again, Shudder exclusive coming Thursday, February 9th. Quick synopsis: it's about two women, one Danish, one from the UK, who meet each other when the one who's from the UK is in Denmark and meets the other one, and they do have an interesting meeting. I did like that aspect of it. They start to form a relationship, they get together, then they go back to where the one from the UK lives, and then it's about her kind of trying to fit in because it's a Jewish community, and she's not Jewish, so she's trying to fit in, and she's trying to kind of learn the customs and everything, but the mother is a little rough, I will say that much. And then there's a horror element too, but I'm not going to say much more than that because if you want to watch this film, I don't think it's a crazy awesome film. This isn't like a must-see, but it is a good film, and you will see that reflected in my rating at the end. So let's get into a little bit more about the film. Character interactions feel pretty realistic, and the dialogue really does help with that. The dialogue is well written. The script is pretty good. The only issue I really have with the script is that the pacing of it is not great. This film probably could have been shaved down about 20 minutes, maybe 25, 30 even. It's an hour and 45 minutes with credits. So it's a little bit on the longer side for a horror film, and you know, that automatically doesn't mean that it needs to be shaved down. It's just the pacing of this is a little bit slow. Now, they do a decent enough job, like, dropping breadcrumbs throughout the film of, like, little bits of interest of what is actually going on here. You get a little thing that feels a little awkward. You get a little item that you're kind of, like, intrigued, like, what is this really all about? And they drop those at a pretty good interval throughout the film, so it does keep you engaged. But you'll definitely start feeling at times like it's dragging and that they're kind of rehashing some stuff that they really don't need to be rehashing, honestly, because they already covered it well enough. So, that said, at least 15 minutes need to be cut, potentially more, in my opinion, to kind of tighten that pacing up, increase interest. They do accelerate the relationship of the two main characters in the very beginning, which I was okay with. I think they handled it in a decent way. The relationship does not feel too rushed, even though it feels a little bit rushed, but the thing is, you got to kind of establish things relatively quick so you can get to other stuff. But unfortunately, once they get to other stuff, then you have those moments where you're like, oh, now you're rehashing other things. Maybe reallocate that time if you really wanted it to run as long as it did to them getting their relationship going a little bit slower. But just a thought. Dark scenes do, for the most part, need to be lit better in this. This is one of my big pet peeves in films when you're watching and you're having a really hard time seeing what you're supposed to be seeing when it's dark. You can light these scenes enough that people can see everything they need, but it still looks like it's dark. Now, that's not every dark scene in this film, but it is the majority of the dark scenes in this film. Thankfully, there isn't a ton of dark scenes in the film. Something feels odd very early in this film, which sets the kind of like an uncomfortable tone to it. I do think they got a good thing going with kind of atmosphere and tone with the film. It's also pretty drab in its color palette, so that kind of helps add to that uncomfortable and kind of like dour tone as well. So I like that aspect of it. They really did get kind of like a good aesthetic for what the story is, and creating an overall feeling of the film for the audience. Again, pacing slow. There's an explanation of interesting lore that ends up playing a part in the story in this film. I'm always a fan of kind of, films that enter another culture that I'm not intimately familiar with, which is a lot of cultures, obviously. So it's always interesting for me to kind of like see some, what I assume are authentic cultural, practices, norms, traditions, all that type of stuff. And lore is a big thing, especially in horror, because I love when I'm introduced to this type of lore because it's lore I'm not very familiar with. So it feels very fresh for me in particular. It might not for other people who are, in this instance, Jewish. It might not be anything super new to them and they'd be like, oh, I know so much about this. But for someone like me, I'm relatively fresh to it. So it adds extra interest in that sense. So I like that. The score is relatively restrained in this film. There are a few times where it starts to get a little bit too heavy, in my opinion, but the composition is good. How it's used overall is quite good, and there are some great scenes where there's no score. They kind of drop it out to help increase tension and make it a little more scary in certain scenes, and I think that works really well. The directing is solid. There's nothing crazy great about the directing. It doesn't really stand out as being super inspired or anything like that, but it's solid, and it's well pulled off in my opinion. The film looks quite drab once again, so if that's something that kind of gets to you. Sometimes it does to me because a lot of films are starting to do that, and have been doing that for many years now, especially in horror, where they like leach a lot of color out of the palette. They keep it like very dark colors in general in every scene. And it just starts to like, I don't know, everything starts to feel very samesies. And you're just like, can we have something a little bit different? Maybe a little brighter palette to it, but it depends on who you are. So the ending is okay. They definitely drew it out too much. That's one of the biggest issues I have with this film is impact can be lessened with pacing issues, especially in the end of a film, and the ending is drawn out way too long. The pacing is not very good. If they would have tightened that up quite a bit, it could have had a lot more impact. It could have played out a lot better. It just needed to go a lot quicker because, again, they have kind of rehashing of some stuff that's already pretty well established. But other than that, a good idea for the ending. Not bad. This deals a lot with the struggles of not feeling accepted in a bunch of different ways. It also deals with similar struggles of kind of not fitting in, also in a few different ways. I think it does a really good job with that, with these themes. And those themes don't really like spoil anything about the film, honestly. They're pretty apparent immediately, and they don't speak so like too much to the underlying horror aspect of the story. It's speaking more to kind of like a character and cultural type thing, where it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's a struggle to, fit in. It's a struggle to be accepted, and they play that a few ways pretty well in the film. Additionally, it deals with parental devotion and what a tough situation that can end up being, not just for the parent, but also for any children. It's uncomfortable when you have a dynamic like that, where it's someone who really wants to do everything they can and someone who doesn't want to be smothered too much, in a sense. And they kind of do a good job of illustrating that sort of struggle on both sides of this film. So I like that. So overall, it's a solid film. I enjoyed it enough. Out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I'm going to give it 3 stars. So a solid enough rating. Let me know if you end up seeing it, what your thoughts on it were. Love it, hate it, in between. Go ahead and put it down in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. And yeah, again, like I said, subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell button, all that stuff. That's your best way to repay me for all this free content. But regardless, thanks for taking your time to watch this. And until next time, keep it brutal.